We have awesome stuff coming up on our roadmap where we have a second web property called stuff.io, which is what we're launching music and video on. And so we've been actively working on that and excited to see that roll out this year.
What's up, Ada Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. My name is Fareed. As a part of today's video, we're going to be doing a deep dive in an interview with Joshua Stone, the CEO of Book.io. This has been well overdue, but they have a solution here that is not just unique and beneficial to Cardano, but they're applying it multi-chain. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring the man up himself. Joshua Stone, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. As I mentioned earlier, I've seen you at plenty of Cardano-based events. Haven't actually had the time to sit down with you, and I was able to get some of your time here. Thanks, and shout out to Ben for connecting us here. And I'm excited to dive into everything book. So, without any further ado, let's just jump right on in. There's so many things for us to chat about. We're going to be jumping into obviously what Book.io is doing. There's a recent Stakepool, BookCon coming up, and then I also want to talk about the roadmap. But before we get into any of that stuff, let's just learn a little bit more about you and your background and just how you came into the book space.
Yeah, so we actually had done a previous book company in the ebook space that we launched back in 2009, ended up selling that to a private equity firm in 2015. And then I stayed there for a couple of years after that. And that was sort of our introduction to the industry. We approached it from technology, and I have kind of a big tech background. I've worked for Expedia, I've worked for AT&T, done some really large scale kind of mass consumer application type stuff. So we approached crypto as more, we approached publishing as more technologists, and then as being kind of in publishing technology, are now looking at blockchain and what it can bring to the publishing world to benefit both publishers and authors and consumers as well.
Thank you for that. The next thing I want to just kind of jump into is the problem within the current book space. I highlighted earlier that there's three sort of key stakeholders within this entire process, right? We have the book consumer or the end user. Yep. We have the authors and the publishers, and then we have the institutions, for example, like colleges and libraries that also heavily rely on books. Can you explain, from all three of their perspectives, some of the current issues that you guys have sort of identified within the market? And then we'll jump into the solutions that Book.io provides.
Yeah, for sure. So really kind of at the core of that, the biggest primary issue is that when ebooks and audiobooks came out originally onto the market, the way that they were distributed was through a licensing mechanism, which means if you go purchase a book on Kindle or iBooks or Audible or any of the existing platforms, you didn't actually buy that book. You actually bought a license just to view that content, and that is subject to change at any time. It's subject for the publisher or the author to go in and change the book or to completely remove the book, right? And you see this same kind of licensing issue happen in video games and with music and video as well, right? You buy a movie from something and then some licensing changes, or Paramount does something and they shift some license from something else, and now a series is no longer available on a particular platform you pay for. So all content licensing has been under this model sort of from the beginning in order to protect it from a digital rights management perspective. So what we really solve for, what we're using blockchain for, is to create that digital ownership, right? Until we had blockchain, until we had Web3 infrastructure and decentralized storage, we couldn't create these kind of individual digital objects and track them in a secure, cryptographically secure mechanism. So bringing that kind of model in to create a digital ownership of the actual content itself. So you actually own the book when you buy it, right? Because an issue right now, if you buy a book on, say Kindle, you can't resell it when you're done reading it. If you buy, an audiobook on Audible and you listen to it and you want to give it to a friend, you're stuck with it. You can't do anything with it because you didn't actually buy those books. You don't own them. So what we're really bringing in is that infrastructure side of it to benefit the end consumer at a mass scale that's sort of, I'd say outside of the crypto bubble, right? There's a lot more consumers that exist who purchase books digitally than there are people that purchase crypto by, orders of magnitude greater. So we think there's a huge opportunity here to like radically shift what's been happening for the past 15, 20 years in the publishing space and present an entirely new kind of solution set.
Thank you. I think the two biggest takeaways that I got from what you just mentioned there with the existing sort of system is the fact that when you're actually purchasing a book, you're purchasing a license. You're not actually owning that physical or that actual book. Second, you mentioned a really good point as well, which is that when you go to resell it, you can't, because again, you're not the actual owner, which is where blockchain technology comes in, especially with NFTs, right? In the fact that now they allow for you to actually digitally own something and have that be verifiable on an open blockchain, for example, like Cardano. Now, let's maybe just jump into the actual core features that book.io provides to solve these issues. For anybody who's brand new to the book ecosystem, can you explain, from the actual book reader to, for example, a publisher who wants to publish a book with book.io, what tools does book.io provide to facilitate the entire ecosystem of, I guess, just the entire feature set of what somebody within the publishing industry might be looking for?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll split it up maybe kind of two ways. One is just like, somewhat slightly technical, but not overly technical. But then maybe the other side too, from a just pure kind of product solution set. So, functionally what we're doing is we're taking the entire book contents of an ebook or an audiobook. We store all of that content decentralized in decentralized storage. We shard it out, we break it apart and store all the little pieces. So then when you go in and you read a book on our reader, on our decentralized application, it's actually streaming in those bits of that book from decentralized storage, and then decrypting them and then displaying them so that you can read the book. So this does a couple of things. It creates a situation where the book then is unchangeable, because once we've put it out into decentralized storage, it's written to blockchain. It's very much like print, right? Once a book is printed, a publisher can't go back and change content in a book that you've printed. Also, it makes books where they are non-degradable, or they're unburnable, right? So they can't be destroyed over the course of time, which is a great benefit, as opposed to physical books where they're looked at in a particular life cycle, and they degrade, and eventually they're just made out of paper, so they turn to trash. So we have this immutable version of it that will not change, and will extend over time. So from a sort of product feature set, we mentioned the benefits of being able to sell and resell the book. From a consumer standpoint too, it gives you a lot of interesting things where if you own that book, then you can get access to different particular features or products that you were unable to, right? So it could give you, for instance, like access to like an exclusive book club with the author. It could give you access to merchandise. It could give you discounts on your next book. Like there's a lot of things that it can add sort of intrinsically out of just the pure book itself, by being able to distinguish that you own that book, which doesn't exist in the licensing model, right? So it's same is true on the publishing side, right? Like a big issue right now with publishers and authors is that they have no way to connect directly with their audience, right? When they sell a book on one of these, licensed centralized retailers, the retailer goes back and basically says, you sold this many books and here's a check for those units that were sold, but they have no way to connect with their audience or build a real following. So if they have another book coming out in a series, or they want to engage their audience, or sell them additional merchandise, or book signing tickets, or all kinds of different things, they have no way to actually engage and own their their customer base in a way that they could interact with them. So all these things are possible now, and we're doing all these things, which is super exciting to see kind of this sort of radical shift in what was definitely a Web 2 implementation versus what this Web 3 infrastructure opens up, just almost endless opportunity.
Yeah, very nicely put again. Not only is there benefits for the reader, right? As you mentioned, I think the biggest one being able to resell them and them having sole ownership, which also really touched on a great point there for the authors, because now again they're able to really deeply and go a little bit further with their community if they want to verify that they own prior assets or own other merch or other books, I should say, to then provide them, early access, whitelist sales, discounts, etc., for
Mhm.
future releases. That really reminds me of something like Noon, which is also trying to connect musicians, right, which are also creators, just like authors, with their communities and letting them sort of benefit, right, from what their passion is, which is to create music.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to jump into, and also just kind of want to reiterate here, is you mentioned the books being stored utilizing decentralized storage.
Mhm.
Um, can you just confirm that the NFT basically acts as a key, right, to unlock access to that data or to those books?
Yeah, so it's I'd say yes, we do use the NFT as sort of the representation of the ownership, right? So that makes it possible to then sell it and resell it and transfer it and those sorts of things. Contained within that, you would see in the metadata structure like a string, an encrypted encryption string that is used to decrypt that book. So we don't token gate from a you can kind of take two different approaches there with a using an NFT as that representation to say either we're going to token gate like a centralized system, which there are some other systems that do that, right? Which the issue is that in a system where I'm using an NFT as just effectively a password to access a centralized system to get access to see content, that content is still operating under a licensing model, so the content itself is still subject to the licensing parameters of that. So you effectively have bought an NFT that is it's really not a whole lot different than if we said we're going to make your Amazon password an NFT, right? It doesn't change the fact that it's still licensed content on the back end that is subject to change or removal. So putting all of that information then in decentralized storage where it can't be changed or altered, means that the NFT itself then acts as your ownership representation, your access to that content, so that it won't ever be manipulated or taken from you.
Thank you for that. I have a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
This is with respect to decentralized storage. So we have a pretty big player here in the space, Iagon. I'm sure you've heard of them. Are there any plans, to collaborate or utilize, other protocols here in the ecosystem to kind of facilitate what you guys are doing there?
For sure, yeah. We, primarily right now we use everything gets stored in IPFS. We're kind of looking at some other solutions. We're also sort of vaguely kind of talking around the idea of, either partnering with some other systems or even potentially creating one of our own. Just because we're moving into, since we do audiobooks, we're moving into music as well and video, and we've kind of built some solutions for that. So the storage requirements obviously get really really big, but then I think there's also an opportunity there from like a almost like a media node standpoint to have something that's specifically built to enable what we're doing, which is this decentralized encrypted assets. So yeah, I think that definitely a lot's going to change there, and it's exciting to see a bunch of other potential solutions that are becoming much much more viable, right? Because a limitation that we've had was a lot of the infrastructure was set up really just to support you know um, you know a picture of something for a PFP, right? And so we're kind of to a certain extent absconding that infrastructure and like maybe even slightly abusing it because we're putting so much more content out there that's necessary to construct richer, deeper files. So I think it is exciting to see how the ecosystem's kind of changing and growing. Really, right? It's a maturity for the entire ecosystem, not necessarily just for Cardano, but just across all the chains that we're working on. Like seeing like moving into this next bull cycle, I think there is a heavy focus on utility and what do these projects actually produce or do, and a big requirement there is storage.
Yeah, I think you raised some really good points there, especially about the utility, which I think book is full of. So I think we've kind of nailed down, obviously, your background, a little bit of the team, and then the problem and solution. Next, I want to talk about some of your current partners and just the importance of partnering up and networking in the space, right? So, some of
Mhm.
your partners include Ingram Content Group. We also have BDMI, as well as Radical Investments, which is a Mark Cuban company. Can you highlight, number one, why it's important to have some of these investors and partners, but then number two, some of the credibility that it also brings to what you guys are doing here in the blockchain space?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they've been great. So those, Bertelsmann Digital Investments and Ingram and Mark Cuban are our three VCs. They all invested in the company back in 2022. So that was the last time that we did a round, and that was the summer of 22. And they've been great. Cuban has been awesome. He's very connected in the crypto Web3 ecosystem, and is very helpful, doing introductions, giving me access to be able to connect with lots of other founders in the space, and it's opened up a lot of relationships. So with Bertelsmann, they're actually the largest media conglomerate in Europe. They own Penguin Random House, which is based in the U.S., but it's the world's largest trade book publisher, which is fantastic. And we like working with them. We also Ingram is one of our investors that had previously invested in our last publishing company as well. I have a great relationship with them. They actually do book distribution, so they warehouse books and they print books on demand for all the publishers and for Amazon. So most of the time, if you've ordered a book from Amazon, a physical book, it was delivered most likely by Ingram. They're like a massive worldwide. They're the biggest book distributor on the planet. And really great. We're doing some really interesting things with them where we're working with their team to develop some print on demand stuff that we call mint and print, so that you could actually print a unique book that is a one of one physical book that has a cover that is the representation of the NFT that you own. So they'd have some. I mean, their technology is amazing. Their facilities are amazing, and yeah, they've been really great to work with.
Thank you for that. And I just tried to think a little bit about other projects in the space and some of the investors or just even connections that they have. And it's very seldom that you see Web3 or blockchain specific projects which have such strong ties with major players outside of the Web3 space. So I think this is where Book has a really huge advantage. Obviously, investing directly into Book, but then also I would assume that this opens up a huge sort of network for you guys outside to introduce this technology to people that may benefit from it all. Now, I want to pose somewhat of a double edge question, right?
Mhm.
Because I would assume that right now the market share is taken by people that are profiting from this license based model. So when you're bringing something like this, which takes some of their revenue away, right, and brings the power back into the people's hands, the publisher's hands, how are people receiving this? How do you pitch Book to people that may somewhat be stuck in that traditional way of thinking and selling books?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of that within publishing. Like publishing is an interesting industry, mostly because a lot of the companies are extremely old, right? And they're just old. They're next to maybe banking would be the only other industry that has the longevity. I mean, we've worked with publishers that have literally individual publishers that have been in existence for like close to 400 years, right? Which is pretty wild considering that most. I mean, most businesses just they don't operate for that amount of time, right? Unencumbered. So, and a lot of that was because effectively when a printing press was invented, a small group of people bought it, and then they basically followed the same methodology of book printing and licensing with the author and publishing for literally centuries. So I mean, the ebook landscape in general, and the whole kind of continuum of publishing, ebooks in general is very, very relatively new. Audiobooks, were kind of on cassette, but then migrated now to, platforms like Audible. So, we get, I'd say, there's maybe some amount of resistance or holdout just because it is new, and we fear change kind of mentality can sort of happen. But most of the time, we look at it more as augmentative. So it's not necessarily to replace everything that they're doing. It's to add to their product set, right? To say, hey, you could sell, X amount of these books as digital assets, as opposed to just only using a licensing model, right? And open up opportunities and let them experience and see, which has been a great, experience with all the publishers we work with, and they're absolutely blown away by the amount of data that they see. They're blown away by also, programmatically we put into they'll receive royalties as the book resells, right? So it opens up an additional revenue stream as well that they've never had on the print or the digital side, which is a huge benefit to them as well. So overall, it's been a positive response, and every time we're able to, but it takes a certain amount of education, right? Because we're not dealing with an audience that is crypto savvy at all. Most of the time, crypto is a bad word. NFT is a bad word. All they see is SBF and the negative press associated with it, right? Especially coming out of this bear cycle where it's everybody they know who had crypto effectively lost money, right? So and so we approach it more as just saying, like, we're using these tools, the infrastructure, to bring these huge benefits into you that help both on the publisher and the consumer side. And to your point earlier too about universities and libraries, right? Where it's also like a large issue. Like textbooks are a really big. Actually, Cuban cares quite a bit about the textbook side of it, because he has children that are in college, and he's witnessing firsthand the insanity of paying thousands of dollars for textbooks every semester, and then them basically being worth next to nothing at the end of that, because there's a new edition out, and all of the waste that has been sort of I'd say in some ways like falsely created because of the way that those systems work. So in our last company, actually, we worked with over 50 different universities. So we're actually in talks with a couple of universities right now, which is very exciting. I think it's going to open up huge opportunities for the universities, especially for the students and for those publishers in that space that have been struggling, both there and in the library system too, because the library system as well has been struggling with this licensing issue, which is somewhat separate but definitely related, where municipality that has a public library has allocated some taxpayer funds to purchase digital books for their digital library, and then rights change, and then that library loses access to huge amounts of their content, which they go back and say, well, we purchased these books, why are they being taken from us? And they're at large scale, like whole libraries are losing big chunks of books, because unknown to them, they were really just buying the same end user licensing agreement that we buy when we buy a book on Kindle or iBooks. So it's kind of a systemic issue that and I say a lot of times it sounds like I'm picking on Amazon or Apple for what they did. And it's not really the case, because that's what technology supported at that time. And we didn't, 20 years ago, we didn't have blockchain, and we didn't have the ability to track and create unique digital objects in a secure way that was, transferable. So I really see it as, back to that kind of continuum of publishing, right? And there's this much time that's been digital, and it's like, that's going to go through rapid change, right? And that's kind of what we're seeing, I think, with the implementation of the tool sets that we're bringing, is like the sort of next evolution and of what digital publishing is going to look like. And then, there'll probably be future iterations that we can't even, imagine or think of now, but definitely ownership is a primary one that we need to start with first.
I just want to say, first and foremost, I'm learning so much, Josh. I appreciate your time here. I'd love to have you on here for a part two. I feel like there's so many different avenues this conversation can go. But of course, I want to make sure to respect your time. Just as a quick recap, I'm taking some notes as you're speaking. With respect to, you branching out to traditional Web2 providers, for example, publishers, it sounds like it's not an either or, right? It's not like they have to do one or the other, but actually they can benefit from both. So they can still continue to utilize their license model while still take advantage and tap into a brand new audience that are more focused on actually being owners of their own digital assets, right? And then on top of that, you also mentioned an additional revenue stream with the royalties, which I didn't highlight earlier, but you're very right about that, right? I would assume that that not only benefits the publishers, but also the author. And again, feel free to clarify me if I'm incorrect in stating that there. Now, you also mentioned just the current educational system. One thing I wanted to just kind of say to that was that this is bringing a use case that I think is extremely tangible, for a lack of better words, right? A lot of people in this space talk about how meme coins are the way to adoption, which to an extent, yes, people hear about meme coins, the price goes up and they want to come in and, check out what's going on in Cardano. But when you're able to tell somebody at a university, and again, this is a problem that I personally had, right? I'm up, maybe a week before the first day of the semester. I'm trying to get my books. I've either got to go to the bookstore or I'm online, looking for free PDFs, whatever the case is. And I think that with something like book.io, you're able to jump on campuses, jump onto these platforms where people understand the problem, and then you can present them the solution. And it's a really great way, I think, to then onboard them into what else is available in Web3 once they understand that particular use case. Again, I think that's the biggest issue that we have here in the space when it comes to bringing new people in here, is showing them utility. And I think this is one of the best ways to kind of branch that, again, really hitting the head of the nail here, right, with the book.io solution. Now, let's keep the conversation rolling. I want to quickly pull up some stats here. Pretty impressive, and I'm not sure how up to date these are, but feel free to correct me here again. So this states you guys have over 180,000 units sold, with over 131 titles, with an average volume per title of 2,003. I would assume that's dollars, but that may be ADA. I'm not necessarily sure there. With an average time for sellout of 43 seconds. So these mints do seem to go pretty quickly. I remember the Gutenberg mint, and I remember that actually selling on secondary markets for like 200 to 300 ADA. That's now, I think, selling for over 15 or 1600 ADA. So congrats to you and the team. There's, I think, an airdrop associated with that, and there's really been a lot of gamification around that, which I think necessitates that particular price. In addition, with respect to retail sales revenue, that's over $4.5 million, with the average book retailing at $22 and the resale right at almost 3x. So that's really impressive to see there, that there is still an opportunity. Obviously, you get benefit from just buying the book and reading it yourself, but there's also even an opportunity to make something, right? And again, this is not for every book, but there's an opportunity to make something here just based off of some of these stats. So the next thing I want to jump into is just your adoption of multiple chains. So I think you guys were a Cardano native project early on, at least that's how I came through you guys, was through the Cardano blockchain. But since then, you guys have expanded to Ethereum, Polygon, and Algorand. Can you highlight the importance of branching out to be multi-chain, but then number two, why these particular chains?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we always approached it with the idea of being sort of blockchain agnostic, only because in our last publishing company, we had worked with close to 200,000 different publishers, and all of them had their own unique technical needs or desires. So we kind of, when we came in, we sort of assumed already that certain publishers, for whatever reason, might say, hey, we only want to do something on this chain or that chain. Maybe they have an investment there or some partnership, or who knows, right? So we always approached it as saying, like, we want to work on as many chains that make sense as possible. So specifically with Cardano, we really like it because of the UTXO model. We like it too because our CTO is really advanced Haskell programmer, so it made a lot of sense. And originally coming into it, we started before Ethereum had moved to a proof of stake consensus. So with several of the publishers we'd talked to, they had told us directly that they would not work on any proof of work blockchains because of the negativity around energy consumption, pollution, those types of things, mostly because they are already in an industry where they're cutting trees down, and they get a lot of flack for creating cutting forests down to make papers, which a lot of that, I'll say, is sustainable what the publishing industry is doing. Which is great, but they also, they don't want that negativity. So we started off with Cardano because it was proof of stake, and really part of that model too was starting out, and our stats, some of the numbers are higher, but your average ebook is going to sell for just right under, or your average ebook retail sells for, under $10, right? So you could say even like, $6 to $9 type of a price point. And at that type of price point, at mass scale, right, there's over 1 billion people that are buying digital books every year. So we can't have transaction fees like we would on Ethereum, where, I buy a $6 book, but then I've got to pay $35 to resell it. That doesn't make sense. So it was, of super high importance to us to find a chain where we could create a system that would have a minimal amount of fees, right? So then within the ones that we've launched them, like you said, with Ethereum and Polygon and Algorand, they all sort of do have their specifics, right? So if we want to do a very small set of very highly collectible books for a particular title, maybe Ethereum does make sense. And we do like, 100 of those, and they do have high prices, and it does have high gas, but it is, specific for that because it's crafted and we use that blockchain as it being a collectible versus, an Algorand, right, where it's, 10,000 times cheaper, is maybe a better implementation for huge kind of mass scale implementation. If we were doing, say a book giveaway to 1 million people on Twitter, right? We don't want to have tremendous gas fees. We want to have the most minimum amount of gas fees associated with that possible, and make it very easy for that user to transfer or give away those books. So with each of the chains, I think there's different there's different pros and cons. But yeah, we've kind of taken the approach that we want to implement on several different chains to give those publishers options, give authors options if they have some, like Cuban's a good example, right? His book is only on Polygon because he has, personally invested in Polygon and supports Polygon and is a part of that kind of ecosystem. And so we, as a platform, we don't want to encumber him as an author or any author that has some particular affiliation for some particular blockchain. So that's kind of the roadmap we've been going down, from a deploying sort of just our methodology in general of how we think about using Web3, right? Is like an end consumer going to care? Middle-aged person who reads, fan fiction books, who's never done anything on crypto, will they care at all what blockchain it is? And my opinion is mostly they're not going to care, right? Just like they don't care if they use Netflix, if that's hosted on AWS or if it's hosted on Google Cloud or Microsoft. Like it's irrelevant to them. All they're looking for is the product benefit that they get from purchasing in that particular platform.
I tend to agree with that as well. Again, as long as I get what I signed up for, I'm not really too picky about who's providing that service, as long as their morals obviously don't contradict mine. And so I think what I got from that latest response was options are obviously great, but then different publishers have different needs, which is why you guys are expanding and exploring different chains. Just a quick follow-up here, what future chains could we see book launching on?
I mean, we're talking internally about a couple. Like I think we maybe have mentioned on a Twitter space at one point about doing something as an ordinal, just to sort of demonstrate that it's still possible, right? And there are authors too, right? Like Safadim, who only care and only think that Bitcoin is the only sort of blockchain, right? So he as an author is a good use case, right? Because he has a particular mindset about something, and I don't maybe particularly think that's probably the best use of Bitcoin blockchain, and it's adding a lot to it. But there's definitely other chains that we're talking to that I think, and some newer ones too, some newer L1s that we're in discussions with too, that may make a lot of sense from a media perspective. Yeah, I think we definitely don't intend to implement on all blockchains because that would be insane, right? But I could see us getting to the point where we have, a dozen or so different kind of options built out. So we've been taking it slow and just, a lot of what we've done too is just like proof of concept to see how an implementation works, so that we have that as a valid use case that we can show different publishers and talk through them with the data to help them understand what these huge benefits are, because it's just so radically different and foreign to them to see this type of stuff happening in publishing.
I'm looking forward to covering those as those are officially announced on your X or Twitter page. For the community here who's listening in, if you guys are not already following book.io, I will go and leave the links to all of their socials as well as official points of contact down below as a part of today's video description. Let's keep the conversation moving along, Josh. There was a recent announcement that actually just came out not too long ago surrounding the book.io stake pool. So can you break this down for the Cardano community? Because if I understand this correctly, you guys will now provide the opportunity for Cardano members to stake and actually earn the book token in exchange.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we just launched it on Valentine's Day, actually. And, part of that, I think from the Cardano side, like we want to participate in just operating a node and participating in running a stake pool. We want to give people that are interested in staking with us the opportunity to earn book, and then we have kind of a great bonus incentive structure for delegating to that pool. A lot of it, which is kind of funny, which is really cool, is that a lot of our audience has been asking for help. They've never delegated, right? They've never there's a good amount of people that have purchased books with us, and it's the first time they ever purchased any crypto related anything. We hear that quite often, so we're in the process of kind of making some how-to videos of like how to delegate, right? So part of it, I think, is an educational process of how do we bring continue to bring these people that were brand new to crypto, but like book ownership made sense to them, and so they started to follow the project. They bought their first crypto asset with us, and now we're showing them like, hey, this is what it means to stake, and how maybe like more at a protocol level, like things are working on the consensus side. So I think it's a cool opportunity. We'll probably partner with some other stake pools coming up. We'll do some interesting things. Like we're not interested in from a stake pool side, like it's we're not trying to upset its existing stake pool operators. I think the more stake pools, the better. As crypto grows and gets bigger, and once we see as we see Cardano going back up and like growing to the scale that we need, I feel like we need more operators. We need more people understanding how to do this. We need more people staking. So I think it's a good exercise, and we have a great guy on the team, Guillermo, who runs Aspen Stake Pool, and he's been really helpful in that. We've talked to some other stake pool operators as well, and they've kind of been very helpful in helping us sort of architect that. So it's super exciting for us. Just want to participate in the community. Our community's been awesome, and provide reward incentives for jumping in with us.
Yeah, kudos and congrats, obviously, for kicking off the stake pool. Already over 11 million ADA delegated with over 570 delegations. So for anybody looking to get in and earn the book token, I do want to be clear in stating that this is a 99% margin. So the book team will be keeping your ADA, but in exchange, you'll be earning the book token. But then there's also, I believe, some bonuses per epoch. So make sure to check out the links down below for all the details surrounding that. They do have a post up on Twitter as well as on their official website, but the stake pool ticker is BOOK. I'm surprised that wasn't taken beforehand. Maybe it is,
Right.
but definitely make sure to check out the pool ticker, which I'll go ahead and leave the link to that down below as well. All right, so we've kind of gone through, I think, quite a bit on my agenda here. But now that we're kind of talking about the actual book token being given away from the stake pool, maybe it's a good opportunity for us to talk about the utility of the book token itself. So can you highlight, what role does the book token play in the book ecosystem?
Yeah, for sure. So we took kind of a different path, as opposed to sort of maybe what you'd say, traditional Web3 startup where you would sell a token and then sort of use that money to then build something. We built and launched the entire ecosystem and launched books and readers and apps, way before we launched the token. So then we released a really comprehensive white paper that kind of details out and detail what the functionality of the token is. And there's a lot of utility built into it, but at a high level, right? Like the biggest reason to have that as sort of our mission as a company is to decentralize knowledge and incentivize reading. And so we have the token, and we want to use that as a read to earn mechanism. So we haven't launched the read to earn mechanism yet, because we wanted to launch the token first. So we had the token out and had a value to it. So we have plans this year to launch the read to earn mechanism. So as you're reading, then you will be earning token that you're unlocking as you're reading. So that benefits you in several different ways. Primarily, you can use the book token then to purchase books or get discount on books, or certain books will only be available for sale. And we've done this a couple of times where you can only purchase the book using book token. There's a lot of mechanisms back to. We have a publisher that's agreed that he actually only wants to be paid in book because he sees sort of long-term value in holding book. That will give you also access to or publisher access to additional merchandising tools, enterprise marketing tools, book club type tools. It's a great way to also have consumers who are reading be able to tip authors in a particular way for, as a thank you for writing great content. So we're trying to build like a full, sort of, recirculating supply of it, such that, there's many different touch points that the token gets used in. So right now we're still kind of in the early stages. We launched the token. I think if I'm not wrong, maybe it came out October 20th. Might have been November 20th. I can't remember now. Crypto time's sort of weird. It feels like years every month. So it seems like a long time ago. It was relatively short. I think it was only maybe just over 90 days ago or so that we released the token officially. And then we're actively building down these other paths of how we can expand even more utility with it.
And I'll take this as an opportunity to also plug in the official book.io white paper. If you guys want to find out or just go into any more details surrounding anything myself and Josh has spoken about, it is all heavily detailed in their white paper. I took a look at that and I found that to be extremely helpful here as well. Now, let's keep the conversation rolling into what I believe is actually going to be the last topic, but arguably one of the biggest, right? So there was a nice little tease that you actually left in one of your updates. I think this was about a month or two back, around the time that the book token had just launched. And you had highlighted that on April 20th, that we would be expecting the first ever BookCon. So now it's 64 days away. Can you explain what BookCon is, what we can expect from it, and how the community can join in?
Yeah, for sure. So we're based just north of Dallas, Texas, and we have such a great community. We decided to have our own, host our own conference. So, we try to participate in the community. We try to go to a lot of the conferences and stuff. A lot of times that, that time seems really compressed, and there's just, anytime you go to a conference, there's just 1,000 things going on. This is why, we've seen each other at conferences. We still haven't had a chance to talk, right? So we thought, what if we just host a, one day kind of single track thing? We can have some really great speakers come in. Charles is going to speak. We have some people from the publishing side, our investors that'll speak. We have some authors and some actual book publishers. We have some other projects that are speaking, some Cardano projects that are speaking, some other chains that are speaking. So we want to just kind of gather everybody together. We're doing a really cool, if people get a VIP ticket the night before, we're doing kind of a fireside chat and a real nice like catered dinner. And then the day of the event, all the food's catered. We're trying to kind of go over the top because we're not really have any interest in becoming, an event, creating company. We're not trying to use it as a revenue generator. So basically all the money that we're getting from it, we're dumping back in. So it's like open bar, and we're going to have a cool party at night. Should just be a great time to hang out and get to talk deeper with our audience and with everybody that we kind of want to when we go to these shows, but we usually just have such limited time. So yeah, the website is on our link to it's on our website to buy tickets. There's a limited number available. I'm sure Ben would kill me if I didn't say that because he wants to continue to stress that. But there's a VIP ticket, there's a general admission ticket, and then there's a digital live stream ticket too for people that are out of the country or can't make it over. And all of those tickets include additional utility. They'll be receiving exclusive airdrop books based on kind of the number of quantities that sells and all of those. So there's some really cool benefits to it as well.
Again, I'll go ahead and leave the links to everything he's highlighted as a part of the description down below. I wish you all the best with that. I saw Charles Hoskinson is scheduled to appear. He's always dropping nuggets about literally any and everything. So I'm interested to see how that goes. It's been about 45 minutes here, Josh. I want to first and foremost, again, thank you for your time and just joining me to talk about book.io. As we get ready to close things down, I'd like to give you the opportunity to highlight anything that you think is of importance that we haven't touched on yet for the general Cardano community.
I'd say, well, the community's been great. Just excited to participate. We get great feedback and have, great fans and great support. Our Discord's fantastic. People should definitely check that out if they haven't. We have what we call our OG, is our original Gutenberg holders. Our OG book club is a part of our Discord as well, which has been really great. We have awesome stuff coming up on our roadmap where we have a second web property called stuff.io, which is what we're launching music and video on. And so we've been actively working on that and excited to see that roll out this year as well. And, continued expansion into books. We're doing some really cool partnerships on the, like I mentioned with the Ingram on the printing side and bundling too, I think, which is going to be really cool, where you can get, the ebook, the audiobook, and the print book all in a single purchase and have the print book shipped to you, which I think is going to be cool. So we've got some great, really cool stuff coming up this year. Super excited about the market warming back up and people starting to get interested in crypto and the space that we've all been hanging out here for the last several years, waiting for.
Thank you for all your contributions. I wish you all the best. And again, big shout out to Ben Illian, their Chief Growth Officer, for connecting the both of us. As I mentioned earlier, I feel like we've only sort of scratched the surface with book.io. I definitely look forward to having you back on here as you guys expand and continue to grow and just mature, right? Not only within the blockchain and Web3 space, but also with respect to the Web2 and outside space as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, Josh Stone, CEO and founder of book.io. As I mentioned earlier, if you guys want to find out more about them, please check out the description down below. But if you guys enjoyed any part of today's chat, I would really appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. If it's your first time stopping by Dapp Central and you want more content like this, focusing on all the great builders in Cardano, consider subscribing. And last but not least, if you have any questions for me surrounding anything we've chatted about, then please make sure to go ahead and leave a comment down below. That said, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.